It started with a message on a travel app. Hey, I'm passing through your city next week, looking for a couch to crash on. I can cook. I don't usually host strangers, but something about his profile felt different. His name was Leo. He had this scruffy kind of charm in his photos. Casual, always a bit off-center, like he wasn't trying too hard. His bio said he was in between jobs and figuring it out, which made me hesitate at first. But then again, so was I. So I replied, yeah, sure. I've got a couch and a decent kitchen. Come through. He showed up on a Thursday afternoon. Backpack slung over one shoulder, a dented water bottle clipped to the side, and that easy, slightly tired grin people wear when they've been living out of buses and borrowed beds. You must be Evan, he said, offering a hand like we were at a job interview instead of my front porch. And you must be Leo, I said, stepping aside to let him in. My apartment isn't anything special. Second floor of a quiet duplex. A little too much IKEA. But it's mine. He looked around, nodded like it passed whatever checklist he kept in his head, and dropped his bag by the door. Thanks for this, he said, already kicking off his shoes. I shrugged. I've hosted weirder. You're not even the first guy I've let sleep on that couch. Cool, he said, then added with a smirk. But am I the best looking? I raised an eyebrow. You're definitely the cockiest. He just grinned. I showed him around, which took all of 30 seconds, and we settled into a rhythm faster than I expected. That night he offered to cook, shakshuka, of all things, and it was actually good. We ate on the couch with the TV, playing some background Netflix noise, legs just barely touching when we leaned back. I forgot what having a home feels like, he said, licking a bit of tomato off his thumb. This is nice. I didn't say anything, just nodded, trying not to notice how his voice dropped when he got comfortable. How he tucked his feet under himself like he lived here. He stayed up late reading on his phone while I half-watched a documentary. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the sound of him quietly folding the blanket I'd left out for him. Didn't mean to crash on your TV time, he whispered. You're fine, I said, voice hoarse with sleep. He smiled. Night, Evan. Night, Leo. And then he was gone. To the couch, to his blanket cocoon, to whatever dreams people like him have when they don't know where they're going next. I didn't expect him to stay more than 2 nights. But he stayed 5. And every day, I found myself liking him more than I wanted to admit. By the 3rd morning, it felt like Leo had always been there. He'd wake up before me, make coffee without asking where anything was, and hum low to himself as he moved around the kitchen. I'd come out groggy and disheveled, and he'd already be sipping from the chipped mug I never used. You're out of oat milk, he'd say, like we were married. You drank it. I'd reply like we were fighting. We weren't. Not really. It was easy with him. Too easy. He told me stories about the cities he'd passed through, where he'd worked briefly as a barback or done temp gigs or met someone who changed his perspective on existence for like 3 days. He said things like that without irony. I learned he used to study architecture but dropped out, said he didn't like how rigid it felt. I liked drawing buildings more than actually making them. You any good? I asked. He shrugged. I'm okay. You want to see? He pulled out a small, battered sketchbook from his backpack that night and handed it over like it was no big deal. It was. The drawings were loose but thoughtful. Cityscapes, faces, even a few pages of quick self-portraits. I recognized his jawline immediately in one. He didn't draw himself flatteringly. That somehow made me like him more. You're better than okay, I said, flipping the page. He looked away, pretending not to care, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. That same night, it rained. Hard. The kind of late autumn downpour that soaks through your socks if you so much as glance outside. The windows fogged up, the streetlights blurred into orange smears. We were watching something dumb on TV, and Leo had migrated from the couch cushion next to me to the one right beside mine. I didn't remember when he moved. I just noticed when his thigh touched mine and stayed there. Neither of us said anything. He didn't flirt exactly, but his eyes lingered when we talked. And he had a habit of touching my arm when he laughed, like it was instinct. I didn't know if that meant anything. Maybe he was just a touchy guy. Or maybe he was testing something. It was around midnight when the power went out. Perfect, I muttered, standing to check the fuse box even though I knew it wasn't on me. Leo lit the flashlight on his phone and followed me like a shadow. No dice, I said, after flipping switches pointlessly. Well, he said, we have options. Like? He grinned. I could tell you a scary story. I raised an eyebrow. You don't strike me as the campfire type. He shrugged. You don't know me. He said it playfully, but it landed heavier than I think he meant. Because it was true. I didn't know him. But I wanted to. So we sat in the living room with candles lit. Two guys in their mid-20s, acting like this was normal. He told a ridiculous ghost story involving a haunted van and a guy named Marco, who only appeared in mirrors. It was stupid. I laughed until my stomach hurt. At one point, in the quiet between stories, I looked over and found him already watching me. What? I asked, a little breathless. He didn't look away. You have a good laugh. I didn't know what to say to that. I hadn't been told that in a long time. He shifted then, just slightly, but enough that his knee pressed against mine again, and stayed there. We were sitting on the floor now, backs against the couch, his arm thrown casually over the cushion behind me. Like it belonged there, like I belonged there. I should have moved, I didn't, and he didn't either. That night, after the power cut, after the rain eased, after we stopped pretending to watch the last flickers of candlelight, Leo didn't move back to the couch. I didn't tell him not to. I didn't offer the blanket, didn't point toward the living room like I had every other night. Instead, I stood in the doorway to my bedroom, heart pounding too loudly for no reason, and he looked at me. Just looked. Not in a should I kind of way, more like he already knew the answer. You good if I crash in here tonight? He asked, voice even. I nodded. Yeah, sure. He didn't bring his bag. Just stepped in, quiet, barefoot, like he'd been here before. I didn't expect anything to happen. That's the truth. I kept telling myself we'd just sleep. We were both adults. It was just a bed. But beds aren't neutral spaces. We both climbed in, careful not to touch. I laid on my side, back to him, staring at the dark outline of my closet door. I could hear him breathing, slow and steady, but I knew he wasn't asleep. Neither of us were. It was maybe an hour later, after my body had gone still, but my mind wouldn't stop running, that I felt it. His hand, barely brushing my lower back, not moving, not pulling away, just resting there. I held my breath. It wasn't a grab, wasn't even a caress, just the weight of his fingers through the blanket, like he needed the anchor. I waited to see if he'd move it, if he'd say something. He didn't. And I didn't stop him. The contact stayed, featherlight. Eventually, I shifted back just an inch, barely enough to be intentional, and he didn't retreat. His hand slid slightly higher. I could feel the heat of it now, through the thin cotton of my t-shirt. Still, he said nothing. We lay like that for what felt like forever. One hand, 1 inch of skin, one choice not to move away. And then he whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. You still awake? Yeah, I said, equally quiet. Another pause. Then, this okay? I didn't answer with words. I reached back, slowly, blindly, and touched his wrist. Not grabbing, not guiding, just saying, I feel this too. He exhaled, like he'd been holding that breath for hours. And then I felt his fingers slide down my arm, trace the inside of my forearm, and stop where our hands met under the blanket. He laced his fingers through mine. That was it. That was the first night something changed between us, not in some big dramatic way, but in the quiet stillness that happens when two people stop pretending. We didn't kiss. We didn't even turn to face each other. We just held hands in the dark until one of us drifted off. I don't remember who fell asleep first. I just remember waking up hours later and realizing neither of us had let go. I woke up tangled in him, not just next to him, in him, or maybe around him. His arm was around my waist, his chest pressed against my back, his legs slung carelessly over mine, like we were two pieces of something that had snapped into place overnight. And for a few seconds, I just lay there, breathing slowly, taking in the feel of him against me, the heat of his skin, the softness of his breath, just brushing the back of my neck. He was still asleep, I think, or at least pretending to be. I didn't move, didn't want to move. There was a strange kind of peace in that moment, uncomplicated, wordless, and I let myself have it, just for a minute, just until I felt him shift. His hand tightened slightly at my waist, his thumb moved, brushing once over the hem of my t-shirt like he didn't mean to. I turned my head just a little, trying to see if he was awake. He was. Eyes half open, face soft in that way people look before their brain has caught up to their body. "Hey," he mumbled. "Hey," I whispered back. We didn't move. He blinked a few times, like he was trying to remember where he was. Then he looked at me. Not startled, not sheepish, just calm. "Sorry," he said, voice low. "I didn't mean to cling." "You weren't," I said. "I didn't mind." That made him smile. Just a little. The kind that curls the corner of someone's mouth without ever reaching their eyes. And then, after a beat, "Did we?" "No," I said gently. "We just slept." He nodded. "Cool. Cool." But neither of us pulled away. We stayed like that for a little while longer. Not talking, not moving, just letting the morning soak in through the blinds. Eventually, he rolled onto his back and stretched, groaning softly. "Damn, your bed's nicer than your couch," I chuckled. "It's almost like it was made for sleeping." He looked over at me again. "Thanks for letting me stay." "Of course," he hesitated. "I mean here, in the bed." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. After that, the day unfolded like nothing had happened. We brushed teeth in silence, shoulder to shoulder at the sink, made coffee, took turns using the bathroom. He played a random playlist off his phone while I fried eggs, humming along off-key like he always did. But the air felt different, like we were both trying not to talk about what happened last night, what almost happened, or maybe what was still happening, quietly beneath the surface. I caught him watching me over his coffee more than once. He didn't look away when I noticed. And when he leaned against the kitchen counter beside me, our arms touched, and he didn't move. He never used to linger like that. Never stood that close when there was plenty of space. But now he did, and I wasn't imagining it. That afternoon, he offered to cook again. "I owe you," he said, half grinning, holding up a can of chickpeas like it was a peace offering. "You owe me like 4 meals already." "Yeah, well, I'm a slow debtor." We stood in the kitchen, side by side, chopping vegetables and bumping elbows more than necessary. He played music again, some lo-fi playlist that made the apartment feel smaller, warmer. At one point, I looked over and caught him staring again, not in a creepy way. Just looking. "What?" I asked. He shrugged. "You always squint when you're chopping onions, even when they're not strong. You gonna draw that in your sketchbook?" "Maybe." I shook my head, but I was smiling. We ate on the couch again, legs closer this time, not quite touching, but not far either. Halfway through the meal, he said, "So, question. Shoot. What's your deal?" I looked at him. "My deal?" "Yeah. Like, are you seeing anyone? Are you into guys? What's your story?" He said it so casually, like he wasn't asking something that made my pulse jump. I wiped my hands on a napkin. "Not seeing anyone. And?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I'm into guys. Mostly." He nodded as if that confirmed something. Then, me too, I think. I blinked. You think? He gave a short laugh. I mean, I don't know. Slept with girls. Thought I was straight. But then there've been moments. People. Guys. You know? I nodded. Yeah, I know. He looked relieved. I've never really talked about it out loud. Well, congrats. You just did. That made him smile. Really smile. And then, quieter. Last night wasn't an accident. I didn't breathe. He watched me, waiting. I know, I said. It didn't feel like one. I didn't mean to make it weird. You didn't. We both stared at our plates, food forgotten. Then he said something I didn't expect. I think I like being around you. It was so simple, so quiet, like a confession whispered through a crack in the wall. I didn't know how to respond. Not with anything as clean. So I said the only thing that felt real. I like having you here. He leaned back on the couch, arms crossed. I've been thinking about staying longer. Like, not forever, but not leaving tomorrow either. I looked at him. Really looked. And I said, okay, just like that. Leo didn't leave the next day. Or the day after. We didn't talk about it much. He just kept staying. His backpack stayed by the door, untouched. His sketchbook ended up on the coffee table. His toothbrush somehow appeared next to mine, without either of us acknowledging the shift. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. But everything about us had started to feel different. He started brushing his hand against my back when he walked behind me in the kitchen, sitting closer on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh. And one night, after a movie neither of us paid attention to, I looked over and he was already watching me. Can I? He started, then stopped. I nodded. Yeah. He leaned in slowly, hesitant, careful, and when our lips touched, it wasn't fireworks or some movie moment. It was something better, something real, soft, intentional, warm. He kissed like he didn't want to scare it away. Like he was still figuring out how to do this, like he wanted it to mean something. And it did. We didn't go further that night. Didn't strip or grope or rush. We just kissed for a while. Slow, lingering kisses that made my skin buzz. His hand rested on my jaw, mine curled around the back of his neck. When we pulled apart, he looked at me like he was still afraid I might regret it. But I wasn't even close. He slept in my bed again that night. No hesitation this time. No gap between us. We didn't hold hands under the blanket. We held each other. The next morning, I woke up first. He was still asleep, mouth slightly open, one hand fisted in the pillow. His leg draped over mine like it belonged there. And maybe it did now. I reached for my phone, not to check messages, but because I wanted to take a photo of this, of him, like this. The light, the peace, the way his hair curled at the edges. I didn't take the picture. I just lay there. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone in my own apartment. That afternoon, while we were doing nothing, just lying around, half watching videos on his phone, he asked, "You ever think about what this is?" I looked at him. "What this is?" He nodded. "You and me." I hesitated. "Yeah, sometimes." He was quiet for a beat. Then, "I like it." "Me too." He smiled, but it was small, like he was trying to play it cool. Like part of him was still waiting for the floor to drop out. So I reached for his hand, held it in mine, and he didn't let go. By the end of that week, Leo had been here for 12 days. 12 days of shared meals and half-folded laundry. 12 days of wanna watch something turning into let's just lie here. 12 nights of him crawling into my bed like it was his. We still hadn't defined anything. But we didn't need to. One night, he came home with a 6-pack and a bag of groceries he definitely couldn't afford. "I got tofu," he said. "Thought I'd try cooking something new." "You don't like tofu." "Yeah," he said. "But you do." He said it casually, like it wasn't loaded, like it didn't mean something. But it did. We stood shoulder to shoulder again at the stove. I watched him try to figure out how to press tofu with 2 plates and a full water bottle. "This is domestic as hell," he muttered, laughing. "Getting soft on me?" He looked at me and, this time, didn't joke back. "Little bit." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nudged his shoulder with mine. He nudged back. That night, we ended up in bed again, under the covers, facing each other in the dark. I could just make out his features in the streetlight glow slipping through the window. His eyes open, watching me. "I keep thinking this is gonna mess me up," he said suddenly. "This?" He nodded slowly. "This. Us. Like, maybe I'm not built for it. But then," he trailed off. "Then what?" I asked, voice soft. "Then I remember how it feels to wake up next to you. And I don't care." My throat tightened. He reached across the space between us and found my hand again. Same way he did that first night. This time, he held it tighter. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I don't know if I'm good at this. I don't even know if I'm bi or gay or just in love with this version of you." He paused. "I just know I'm not ready to leave." I looked at him. At this almost stranger who somehow became the safest person I had let into my life in years. "You don't have to leave," I said, and I meant it. We didn't kiss that night. We just held hands under the blanket and let silence say everything we were still learning how to say. He stayed. Not forever, but longer. Long enough to meet my friends. Long enough to draw me in his sketchbook when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Long enough that my apartment started to smell like both of us. We never called it anything. But sometimes, when he was cooking and humming to himself, he'd glance back at me and say, "I like us," and I'd say, "Me too," because it was true. Whatever we were, whatever we weren't, it was real. And sometimes, real is enough.